Hello, Good Grief Festival, and welcome to Grief Chat. I am your host, Amber Jeffrey, the host of the Grief Gang podcast. And for this Grief Chat today, we're going to be talking about miscarriage. And so to help me talk about this conversation and this topic, I am joined by Dr. Jessica Zucker and Adam Ferguson. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you both?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you both for joining me. It's a real pleasure. When this opportunity arose, I thought none other than the pair of you to have this conversation, as I really admire both of the work that you are doing. So to kickstart our conversation today, if you could just tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about your story and what your relationship is to miscarriage and grief. Adam, if you wouldn't mind going first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm married to my wife for 4 years, Kaylee, and we after getting married, the natural step for a lot of couples is to start to think about starting a family. A lot of our friends had started their families before us, and we've been very career kind of motivated and driven up until that point, but thought now's the time. So started trying for a family, and fair to say it's not gone to plan. We've experienced 4 miscarriages over a year-long period during lockdown, which just made it even better. We're able to ultimately conceive, but having difficulties carrying further than 8 weeks. So one was about 7 weeks, a miscarriage, 5 weeks miscarriage, 6 weeks miscarriage, and then a pregnancy of unknown location, about 6 weeks, which over a year-long period has been pretty rough, quite frankly. When you start to try for a family and everyone around you's just made it look easy. First pregnancy, you get dead excited about the way you kind of envisage it to be, and imagine, how it should be. And you only keep it quiet because you're told to keep it quiet up until 12 weeks, because, anything could happen, but, nothing ever does happen. And the reality is, it often does happen. As we know, one in 4 do end in this way, unfortunately, and we just have been super unlucky to have our first 4 end in this way. So it's not been easy, as you can imagine, and I think it's a really difficult for everyone involved, but it's a very challenging dynamic as a partner as well. Obviously we're not going through it physically, and absolutely, emotionally and physically is kind of heartbreaking for the woman involved. It's a really difficult dynamic as a partner, because you're grieving yourself. You also can't grieve too much, because you've got to be there to be strong for somebody else who's grieving. So it's not been easy, but we're still on our journey, and we're in the right hands to hopefully find out how we can have more success in the future. Let's put it that way. So yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for sharing that. And Jessica?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Jessica Zucker. I'm a Los Angeles-based psychologist, and I specialize in women's reproductive and maternal mental health, and have done so for over a decade at this point. So when I originally decided to specialize my practice in this, I had no lived experience that actually related to my patients. And then when I was 16 weeks into my second pregnancy, I had a miscarriage while I was home by myself. And this book is a result of that. And in the book, I really delve into the gory details of what I lived through. And I do so in the hopes that it helps other people feel less alone, less isolated, more vocal, and for people to understand that this is a normative outcome of pregnancy, unfortunately. Of course, my experience didn't seem to be. Of course, a majority of miscarriages do take place in the first trimester, and a majority of them, have to do with chromosomal issues. But we need to normalize this conversation. We just do. My patients for years had been sitting across from me talking about, feeling guilty, feeling shameful, blaming themselves, thinking it was something that they did or didn't do that created this unfortunate outcome. And so, although I had been sitting across from women and couples for years and years, and I had read all the books on the topic and tried to keep up with all the research, I, of course, really didn't understand from a corporeal, from a lived perspective until I went through it as well. So a couple of years after my loss, I launched the I Had a Miscarriage campaign with my first New York Times piece. And again, just really felt like, what are we doing culturally? And it's global, because it's not just, I'm here in America, but it seems to be ubiquitous that this conversation remains shrouded in silence and stigma. And it's just time that we upend this. It's got to be turned over. Why? Because this is not a disease. It's not going to be cured. And 1 in 4 pregnancies result in miscarriage, 1 in about 160 in stillbirth. Then there's terminating for medical reasons. There's SIDS, there's infant loss. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So,
and you touched on there talking about the silence of it, and I believe that is the title of this chat, which I didn't introduce it as. It is the most silent of losses, isn't it? And it goes so under the radar, and it's so silent, and it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be like that. And
and as Adam pointed out, it's very unfortunate that the medical community sort of doesn't realize that they're feeding this silence and that they're feeding these feelings, I think, of stigma and shame when they say, why don't you wait to share your news until you're quote unquote out of the woods and into the second trimester? Well, those of us who have lost in the second trimester know that you're kind of never out of the woods. But also because, the construct actually is a setup for people to feel isolated in their joy and or in their grief. So why can't we just share whenever we feel like it, knowing the statistics, knowing full well that we might lose the pregnancy, but also knowing that it could result in a live baby, right? So
I think that's really both sharing the joy and the pain as well. It's when everybody announces a pregnancy, everybody does jump for joy and everyone is there. But where is people in the time of the need when that pregnancy doesn't go full term?
And I think because it is, not spoken about, people assume that it doesn't happen. So that when it does happen to you, you feel like a real anomaly until you understand just how frequently it must be happening. So, if we talk about it and, make it clear how frequently this must be happening, however many kids come into the world every year, 25% of the pregnancies that happened were unsuccessful, didn't have, a live child at the end. If we talk at that kind of level, then if, God forbid, it happens to anybody, then they go, there was a 25% chance this was going to happen. It doesn't make it easier, but it doesn't make you feel like, it's like you've done something wrong. And I think, that's just the whole word miscarriage. It just infers that somebody's done something wrong. you've miscarried. It's nothing about that. It was going to happen or it wasn't going to happen. It was going to be successful. It wasn't going to be successful. Like, there is no blame in that, but I don't think that helps in itself. If you missed something, then you've done something wrong, and nobody has. So yeah, I don't think that's helpful. Yeah, in the terminology, yeah.
Yeah, terminology and language, I think, is so very important in these topics and in these conversations. It can really make or break somebody's feelings and emotions and how their grieving journey goes forward. But Jess, I wanted to ask you, you showed us your wonderful book there, I Had a Miscarriage, and so I wanted to ask you both and touch on both of your fantastic work. There it is. So I wanted to ask you both, so obviously Adam, you've started the podcast Men Talk Miscarriage, and Jessica, you've had your book and your campaign, and they're both absolutely two fantastic resources. But I wanted to ask you both, how has starting those projects and those works for you helped you both navigate through your losses?
Sure, Jessica.
Oh, you want me to start? Okay.
Yeah, I went.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important question that I don't think enough about, to be honest. But I think the simple answer to this, poignant question is I wanted to create what it is I wish existed when I had my loss. So my loss was actually October 11th. At this point, it was 9 years ago, in a handful of days from now. And little did I know that October 15th was Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day. So, of course, I had heard that there was an awareness month here in America, but until I sort of turned to Twitter soon after my loss, just to, I guess, distract myself from the pain I was feeling, it wasn't until then that I actually, came across all these posts about this important day. And I started searching through, Twitter handles and posts and blogs and whatever, just to see, what's out there. What is this community all about? And although I found so much comfort, I also felt sort of like there was a lack of something that resonated wholeheartedly. I wanted something that was free from, I guess, the more religious aspects and undertones of some of the loss community conversation. I wanted people to say, fuck loss, fuck this, and really sort of be outspoken about the pain of it and questioning why women are often turning these horrible situations on themselves. I think that it's very unfortunate that from the get-go, girls and women are groomed to somehow think that if there's an outcome that they didn't desire, it's somehow their fault. And so I was just hoping, in my sort of humble way, to make some sort of dent in the cultural conversation surrounding pregnancy and infant loss.
And that you have. And that if you can,
I don't know.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have.
You can only hope.
Absolutely fantastic, Jessica. Thank you. And Adam, your wonderful, wonderful podcast and providing the male perspective as well through miscarriage. How has it helped you?
Yeah, so well, anyone who knows me would think this would be the last thing I'd do, especially around the topic, because I'm as a lot of guys are, a bit of a closed book when it comes to talking about emotions. Just crack on, get my head down, look for a distraction and carry on. That's not dealing with anything. It's just masking it and moving forward. I'm well aware of that, but sometimes it's easier. It was kind of, I thought about, ultimately, like Jessica said, I was looking for what I kind of needed at that point in time. Kaylee turned to podcasts. She found a few podcasts. Worst Girl Gang Ever is one that she listened to very frequently. She loves them, so shout out to them. But because she genuinely, she'll smile. yeah, she'll be tearing up, she'll be she'll be crying, she'll be smiling, she'll be laughing, she'll just be, she could just relate to it. So I thought, I'll tell you what, I like my podcasts, personal development podcasts and things. Let's see what I could find. And like Jessica said, I found one, and it was, no disrespect, they did it for their own reasons. But two guys over in America talking about that it was God's way, and it was, everything happens for a reason, and looking for comfort in faith that I don't hold particularly strong. And I just thought, what's the chat I would have with a mate over a beer, saying how shit it all is, and and I wanted to hear that. I wanted to hear people, like you said, just talking about how shitty miscarriage is, and how the whole situation is, and ultimately what they've then done, or how they kind of coped, or how they supported their loved ones whilst looking after their own mental health and physical health and just well-being. And there wasn't anything there. There was very little online. I suppose, understandably so, considering guys aren't exactly renowned for, like I said, being, outwardly emotional or overly confident to talk about things at the best of times, let alone the worst of times. So, it was just a reflection of what I felt that I needed to hear. I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone to have those conversations, B, by having those conversations, take comfort in them myself, and C, have the conversations that somebody else isn't, comfortable to have, and allow them just to listen. They don't have to talk. It's the beauty of a podcast, if you're not on it, is you can just listen, and you can listen in the comfort of your home, whenever you want, wherever you're comfortable to do so. And it was that was the idea behind it, really. And just through talking about it, every situation is very, very different. In some cases, I'm like, well, I'm actually fortunate to still, have a chance, and it puts things into perspective. And then you see others that have kind of spiraled away and had real, deeper difficulties in dealing with it. And you think, actually, I'm not doing that bad. And it's just perspective. I think hearing other people's stories, hearing how they've coped. But that's the thing, it's perspective, which we talked about actually talking about miscarriage, is the whole perspective of 1 in 4, is the perspective that, this is happening to lots and lots of people. So let's just hear those stories. And that if people can take something from it, tips, hints, just comfort in hearing those stories and knowing that actually, shit, that happened with me as well. That feeling that I felt of, just lost, or just, I don't know what to do. No one teaches you how to deal with it. You're struggling and you're trying to hold back the tears, but at the same time, she's breaking down and you've got to try and be there. It's like, no one teaches you how to deal with that. So, sometimes you don't need to learn how to deal with it. It's just knowing that you're not alone. You can kind of take comfort in that sometimes.
Yeah, I think I think by being vocal, we actually learn that it's okay to just lean into our feelings. We don't need answers. There's no fixing this. There's no solution necessarily. I mean, maybe there are physical solutions to miscarriage, but I just mean the feelings that arise. And I think in general, when it comes to mental health, and especially when it comes to grief, we flee. People try so hard to get back to who they were previously, and it's just not possible. So I actually think the sooner we sort of learn to lean into the grief, which I think a podcast like yours, that's exactly what it's initiating and hoping to do. It's like, the sooner we actually realize, I can survive this. I may not want to in this moment, but my feelings in an hour from now, in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, in 10 years will surely be different. And what have I learned along the way? That I'm not the only one, and that I can experience a spectrum of feelings, the nuances, you know, the fear, the pain, the anger, the anguish, and continue. And I think we need to experience that as humans. You know, that's what grit is all about, that we go through these hard things that we don't want to go through, and somehow we keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I think when you start talking, when you start talking about it as well, people go, oh yeah, I've had a miscarriage, sat there with 3 healthy kids. Oh, I did. Oh, I had one after my first. I had one before my third. You know, and it's just that gives you that bit of hope as well. It's like, all right, so it's not the beginning of the end then. You know, and you know, unfortunately, it is for some people. You know, they don't ever go on to be able to have, you know, healthy children biologically, and you know, that's awful. But for the majority of people, it's not an indication that it's, you know, the end of your natural, you know, attempts at having a child. So just by talking about that and hearing that makes you just go, so all's not lost. You know, it's cool. Yeah, it's huge, more than a bump in the road, but ultimately we can keep going. So, you know, if we're not having those conversations, and people aren't then talking about, you know, just volunteering the information to you in a conversation. Oh yeah, I had a miscarriage. Like, yeah, unless you talk about it and kind of initiate it to then hear it, you know, you do feel like, oh wow, no one's had one, and only the people that haven't had one have now got kids. But it's not the case. So yeah, it's a little bit of hope, a little bit of comfort, you know, things like that just help to keep a bit of a spring in your step.
Yeah, both of you saying hope there, that's what comes to mind. You're both providing hope in both of your fantastic work. Amazing, the pair of you. My next question is, and I have a good thing, I'm sure you have both heard so many things that have made you literally roll your eyes into the back of your head and go, oh my God. But what's a big misconception that you would, you know, in your lifetime want to see break around miscarriage, and something that you want people to know about the actual reality of what it is like? Jessica?
Well, it's interesting because I thought your question was actually going to be about, you know, what are things that people say that make you crazy? I was about to take on platitudes, you know, including God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Everything happens for a reason. At least, you know, you can
everything happens for a reason. That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah. But I mean, but to your question, I mean, my hope in this lifetime is to see people not blaming themselves basically for something over which they have no control. So I think this gets to a larger sort of societal issue. Like I was saying before, girls and women are sort of groomed from the get-go to think, and you know, maybe men as well, you know, if you try hard enough to achieve something, you can have it, right? Yeah. So if you work hard enough, you will get that job, you will get into that college of your choice, whatever. And I see this a lot in my patient population because I, you know, have a lot of very driven, extraordinary people as patients, and they can't wrap their heads or their hearts around this issue. But I'm trying, I've done everything. I'm near perfect, right? It doesn't matter. And I think that that is the thing that kind of is the most sort of crushing. Because if you don't have control, then how can you control a different outcome? Yeah. And so that's why people start to turn to like, okay, I'll eat more blueberries. I'm going to go to more acupuncture. I'm going to exercise more. I got to do it. And all of those things can be, of course, very helpful. But when you look at the science and you look at the research, you know, chromosomes are chromosomes.
Yeah. And that's heartbreaking part is that, yeah, you can do. And and for you to see that. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes, of course, when it's not about chromosomes, it can be about something that is happening in the woman's body, and that can be addressed. And then you feel, that you can actually address the issue and move forward in a different way. But I think, the fact that I sit and listen to people questioning, is it because I wanted to become a mother too much? Is it because I had a lot of ambivalence actually about becoming a parent? Is it because I had a sip of wine in my first trimester? Is it because I had an orgasm the other night? Is it because I ran 3 miles? Is it because the list goes on and on? It had to be me. It's something I thought about, didn't think about, did or didn't do. We have to change this, because again, it gets to this point. If we can just lean into the feelings, we don't have to scurry to find solutions. If I did this, what if, the litany of what ifs. There's not always an easy answer. There's not always a fix. And so that's my hope, is that people can actually sort of turn to the science instead of going within and thinking that they could have done something to change the outcome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Jessica. And Adam?
I kind of wish you came to me first on that one, but because I was going to, my first point was I was going to, as I mentioned about miscarriage, the word, that blame, that, feeling like somebody has done something wrong and, starting to dislike themselves for it or things like that. But I won't go back over that. But for me, another piece is people to actually acknowledge that it's a loss of a child. It's well, no one's said this, but it's just ultimately, you don't get really like bereavement leave or things like that. Ultimately, you have lost a child. It just didn't happen to make it outside the womb, but you still develop those kind of feelings. So you are, in essence, it depends what side of the argument in America people are on as well. But it's for me, you conceive the child, you've got a child. So that's why people talk about father to or mother to X amount of angel babies, or or whatever the terminology is. But ultimately, for me, it just needs to be acknowledged that actually, just because the child was born doesn't mean that when they're lost, it's any easier to deal with. I'm not talking from experience on the other side, but I just have seen the impact that it's had, felt the impact that it's had, and it's fortunately I've got a great place to work who just literally you do what you need to do, but not everyone has that, and I think it just needs to be acknowledged that actually you shouldn't have to take holiday to go to your scans, or if you're not feeling very you're not feeling up to facing the world, shock, horror, you've just lost a child, you have to take holiday for it, or sick, or whatever. You are grieving having lost a child, and I think there are some steps being made, the likes of New Zealand and places like that, where they are that yes, it's a good step in the right direction, but a few days isn't going to cut it. They've not twisted their ankle, so it is something that takes, and sometimes can never be overcome. And I think we need to start acknowledging that, as a society, as a world, and acknowledge that if a child died, yes, you would absolutely have whatever it was that you needed to make it through, kind of understanding and beginning to cope with that. Why not have a similar kind of approach to helping mothers who just weren't able to give birth to to a healthy youngster? So Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing for me. I'd love to see change.
It be acknowledged, yes. And it is, it's almost like society, because they can't see the baby or have been able to lay their eyes on the baby. To them, that baby's not real to them.
Yeah.
But that baby's so real to mum and to dad. And so that's why, the wider world can move on. But I saw something not long ago and it really hit me. And it was like, your baby matters no matter what gestation. And whatever gestation that was that your baby died, your baby matters and it deserves to be respected and honoured. So I hope for those misconceptions to be busted in all of our lifetimes, because they're very important. And to finish off, so I know there's going to be so many people that are watching this that have either gone through a miscarriage or even supporting somebody who has been through a miscarriage. What kind of support is out there for them? What things worked for you, and like where did you two turn to, just to end this amazing chat for people and where they can go?
Sure. Okay, I'll say for the guys, you've got some good organisations which we'll link. There's I've forgotten the name of now. There isn't it's Miscarriage for Men. Miscarriage for Men is a guy called Chris, I believe, set it up again off the back of his own experiences. And it's just a community, it's a blog, it's somewhere people can share written stories or go in for a bit of inspiration, a bit of comfort. Beyond that, not a huge amount. There's SANS, which is the football teams, organization where guys get together and they've all experienced baby loss in some shape or form, and they come together, play football. The social side, I'm not involved in that myself, but I follow them on Instagram, and it looks like a fantastic kind of community to be a part of. I've just got glass knee, so I can't play. So, but beyond that, for a guy, there wasn't a lot, and you are a lot, and understandably so. Any of the support is directed towards the mother, be that NHS counselling or anything like that. We are kind of just the forgotten person, really, and it's not a pity party, but it's just an acknowledgement that there were two parents. Absolutely. The mother is physically going through it and emotionally, but it doesn't mean that it's not affecting the father as well.
I feel like I should just add this here, if it's okay, because I have had many same-sex couples over the years in my office. And so, I think it's not just the man, I think it's the partner, right? So it's the person who didn't physically go through it that I think there's a lot of confusion around. Where's the space for them? And what's the support for them? And you said earlier, it's like you can feel your feelings, but then you really want to be there for your wife. And I really try to counsel patients through, couples that I see through, like, how do we fully acknowledge and honor what we're feeling while also being there for the partner? And it's tricky. And I do think, unfortunately, some people use that almost not consciously, but as an excuse to not feel their feelings fully. Well, I have to be strong for her, and it's like, well, do you though? Like, you have to be accessible to her and in communication and honesty together. But I don't know about this like strong thing. I don't know how much it actually serves us, because maybe what she really wants is to see your pain and to see that it's affecting you. Because I know in my situation, I get into this in the book, and it's pretty, painful how honest I am about my marriage at the time. But I felt such a chasm because I think my husband did feel, he was so worried about our future. He was worried, about our son that already existed, how would this affect him? He didn't know about the pregnancy or the loss of it, but still. And he was worried about me. So he, to me, looked like he was just going about his day, checking in with me, but like I didn't see it written on his face the way I could just feel it, in my bones and my cells and whatever. It wasn't until later that I realized that he was able to articulate that he didn't know where he fit.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, it's like, because people aren't talking about like, what do the partners do? And so he kind of held it together, but not because he necessarily wanted to, but because he felt he had to. And so I do think culturally we have to work on this, in a major way to really carve out true time.
That really reminds me of a conversation I had with a gentleman. They lost their baby. Rion remembers, they're on Instagram, and I interviewed him for the podcast. Very quickly, I'll say this. And he was told, obviously, to keep strong for your wife, keep strong. And he told me this, and he said, when people would say that to me, it would really upset me because it actually diminished the strength of my wife.
Exactly.
And it really spun it on its head, and it made me go, wow, because. And he was like, we're equals in this. We are equals, and we're going for this together. And when people say to me, be strong for her, as much as he did feel that and lived up to that connotation, he said, but that also diminishes the strength of my fantastic wife as well. And I was like, wow.
And why isn't there strength in tears? Like, I don't know. We've come up with such a binary way of thinking about emotions. It's like you're either strong or you're a mess. It's one or the other, and that it's so not true, and it's hard
on your point there, Jessica. I've experienced it as well with Katie. She's created at times a little friction because we're processing the information in our own ways, and because I'm not visibly upset for as long, she thinks I'm over it. I mean, I've moved on. It's not the case. It's not the case, but it's just me. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no right or wrong way to deal with these experiences. Everybody processes it in their own way, deals with it in their own way, but it's really hard to articulate that, or to for others to understand, and for me to be like, look, we've got to kind of look forward now. And I'm not saying don't, but I'm just being me.
Yes,
but I'm not as visibly and physically upset as she is, so it looks like I care less. But it's do you know what I mean? So it's just such a really challenging kind of dynamic in which, in any grief, people will do it in their own way and try not to read into what others are doing, or the other partner is doing in their grief. It's their journey, and as well. So I think it's when you just mentioned that, I was like, we've had a few conversations about that.
I mean, it's really hard to not take it personally the way the other person is processing it, And so, I think especially when hormones are ablaze and maybe you're still bleeding. And I mean, for me, my milk came in after my loss, like it's just a mess. And so to feel like the other person is sort of still functioning, it's uncanny, the disconnect. And yet if you don't take it personally, it's sort of like, oh, well, lucky him. And also, he may just be needing to have a straight face and go about distractions in order to get through the pain and the grief.
And
I know I have to jump.
I'll say, just before you go, Jessica, I know Jessica, she's a busy lady. Before you go, if you could just share with the audience just some resources that you found were really good for you.
Sure. Well, it's a hard one because there are so many wonderful resources out there, but I think Tommy's is doing incredible research in the UK, and there's there's others. I'm going to need to send you links, I think. But for me, to be honest, I found the most resonance through other people, through Instagram, which I love to say, because I think, there's so much around social media that people are always saying, everyone's posting pictures of their perfect pregnancies. Well, I actually think Instagram is an amazing place to shatter the silence and the stigma and really talk about what's happening. And so I think, through various groups on Instagram is sort of how I came to feel in community.
Yeah. I'm an advocate for that as well. Well, Adam and Jessica, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. Everybody here at Good Grief Festival, thank you for watching this grief chat. I have been your host, Amber Jeffrey, and this has been our grief chat, miscarriage chat with Dr. Jessica Zucker and Adam Ferguson. Thank you.